Over the last decade, lending by non-bank institutions has exploded, stacking up into a massive $1.8 trillion shadow banking sector. But as traditional banks pulled back, this market shattered into over 1,000 new firms eager to write loans. Which brings us to Oslo, Norway, at the Norges Bank Investment Management Conference in April 2026. JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon stood up and issued a very specific warning to that crowd. He stated that when the credit cycle inevitably turns, the fallout is going to be worse than people think, and many of those 1,000-plus firms are not going to survive it. Wall Street has been posting banner quarters and celebrating healthy loan portfolios, yet the most powerful banking executive in the world is publicly pointing to a hidden, significant risk quietly ticking away inside the financial system. Here is where things get strange. Even while sounding the alarm, JP Morgan's asset management arm is actively talking with institutional investors to raise several $billion for a brand new private credit strategy of their own. Publicly, the message is caution. Privately, Wall Street's biggest player is aggressively pushing capital directly into the exact space they claim is under threat. Why would a bank rush headlong into a market that its own CEO believes is about to crack? JP Morgan is positioning itself to be the primary liquidity provider when the cycle breaks. By raising billions now, they are preparing to step in and buy while their competitors are forced to retreat. To understand this strategy, we have to look at the environment that created it. The global economy hasn't seen a true credit recession in years. We've been living in an era of abundant capital and near-zero interest rates. In an environment where money is cheap and default rates are incredibly low, even amateur lenders look like financial geniuses. The math is changing. Geopolitical tensions, particularly the conflict involving Iran, and a push toward global remilitarization are acting like a pressure cooker on the global supply chain. Combine that with the need for new infrastructure worldwide and ballooning national deficits, and the cost of doing business goes up. This graph shows exactly what that looks like on paper. Rising inflationary pressures actively squeeze the profit margins of the companies taking out these private loans. It costs them more to operate, leaving less cash to pay back their debt. This long stretch of economic calm didn't eliminate financial risk. It just buried it deep inside the loan portfolios of inexperienced firms who have never had to manage money through a real downturn. When that downturn hits, survival comes down to one dry technical metric: underwriting standards. Think of underwriting as the structural foundation of a loan. It's the rigorous process of verifying that a borrower can actually survive a stress test. When inflation turns up the heat, badly written loans default. With 1,000 new firms flooding the private credit market, Dimon guarantees not all are brilliant. Many rely on loose math that simply snaps under the weight of higher costs. This is exactly why JP Morgan is raising billions to enter the space right now. They have decades of commercial banking expertise to underwrite loans that hold up, and they are actively betting against the amateur lenders who don't. Wall Street's elite are preparing to watch unprepared firms burn. They have the resources to survive the heat, and they know newer rivals do not. If a massive $1.8 trillion credit market fractures, the immediate fear is contagion. Will this trigger a total systemic collapse? It's easy to look at the numbers and picture the bank runs and bailouts of the 2008 financial crisis. But Dimon explicitly noted in his annual letter, and reiterated in Oslo, that the private credit crash probably does not pose a systemic risk to the wider economy. Modern private credit is structured differently. The money being lent out largely comes from institutional investors and private funds, not everyday checking accounts. That creates a financial guardrail, quarantining the risk. The resulting damage stays isolated. While some investors will lose heavily, the structure of these private funds acts as a firewall, protecting the retail banking system from a total meltdown. So what does the aftermath of a localized crash look like? It won't be a global depression. Instead, it's a brutal, necessary purge, a reset sweeping through the market, clearing out the deadwood and leaving only the deeply rooted institutions standing. For the 1,000-plus new firms that entered the space during the boom, the human and operational cost will be steep. Hundreds of them will simply cease to exist, their bad loans failing and their entire portfolios forced into liquidation. Which brings us back to those billions of dollars JP Morgan is quietly raising. Wall Street giants issue these public warnings because they are actively hoarding capital, preparing to buy up the liquidated assets of those failed firms at steep discounts. The greatest growth for these banking giants often happens during the cleanup. By waiting for the purge, they can consolidate their power and take over the market share left behind by 1,000 failed competitors.